Good evening, everybody. Ooh, surprised myself. It has gone 6:30, so we'll start now. I have a dilemma. If I have my glasses on, I can see you, but I can't read this. And if I take them off, I can't see you, but I can read this. So you'll have to be blurry. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending Planning Committee, Tuesday the 25th of May 2021. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Councillor June Molyneux, and Chair of the Committee. Councillor Alex Hilton is Vice Chair. This is the first planning meeting of the municipal year, and we're all here in the Lancastrian together. The meeting is also being streamed live on YouTube. Welcome to some familiar faces, I'll not say old faces, and some returning faces to committee, and some new faces. So welcome everybody. Members, when you want to speak, press the button on your microphone to indicate to me that, and you can raise your hand if you want as well, to make so that I know you wish to speak. When invited to speak, wait for your microphone to turn red before you start to speak, and you can remain seated because that will help us to hear. As this is only the second time we've used the microphones, please bear with us. If you have any problems or difficulty hearing, please let Ruth know. Can all members respect the COVID measures in place for everyone's safety and ensure that any mobile phones are switched off? We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, it's real. So please exit the way you came in. Apologies.
We've received apologies from Councillor Keith Iddenchair and Councillor John Dalton will be subbing.
Thank you. Item 1, minutes of the meeting Tuesday the 27th of April, pages 3 to 6. Will somebody move those, please? Thanks, Councillor Whittaker. Somebody second them? Anybody in favour? All those in favour? Please indicate. Everybody happy with those? Any against? Okay. The minutes have been approved. Item 2, declarations of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of the matters on the agenda. If you have a pecuniary interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. You do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Item 3, planning applications to be determined. There are 3 items for us to determine tonight. And the first one is item 3A, Prospect Cottage, Gregson Lane, Brindle, pages 7 to 30, with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item. Recommendation remains that full planning permission be granted subject to conditions. I have 2 registered speakers, the objector, Barbara Still, and the agent, Louise Leyland. Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Members will be mindful that this application was deferred at the last Planning Committee in order to allow the committee the opportunity to visit the site and to understand the relationship of the application site with its neighbours. That visit took place yesterday. I'll go over again the information I gave at last committee because I'm mindful that we do have new members this evening. The application seeks planning permission for a 2-storey rear extension to Prospect Cottage, which is located on Gregson Lane. The proposed extension would project to a maximum of 5 metres and would have chamfered corners. Members will note that the originally proposed balcony has now been withdrawn from the proposal. Representations from the occupiers of the neighbouring property have been received, predominantly raising issues relating to the scale of the proposal, the potential loss of light due to a side-facing kitchen window at number 2 Oakbank, and the loss of privacy as a result of the originally proposed balcony, but the neighbour has commented that they welcome the deletion of this element of the proposal. A letter of support has also been received from the adjacent church. The proposed extension would project beyond the rear extension at the neighbouring property. However, it would not project beyond a 45-degree line drawn from the nearest point of the rear-facing ground floor window. In addition, this kitchen extension benefits from 3 windows, including the window along the common boundary. The other 2 windows overlook the neighbour's garden and private amenity space, and as such, the window along the common boundary would be considered a secondary window and is not afforded protection under the Council's planning policy set out in the supplementary household design guidance, especially given that the boundary treatment or outbuildings could also be positioned in this location under permitted development rights. There is a first floor bathroom located on the Shamford corner of the proposed extension, and the window would be obscurely glazed. The proposed extension would be located to the rear of property and as such would not impact on the street scene and would be screened by the neighbouring church building. Parking would remain as existing. I would bring members' attention to a plan that we've agreed can be circulated at the meeting this evening. That's being presented by the objector to the scheme who lives next door. Just a note of caution really to make you aware that the plan hasn't been checked for any level of accuracy by officers, and it is submitted by the neighbour, and again it's their drawing, so I haven't had time to corroborate any of the information on it. I just want to clarify the position with regard to what is known as the 45-degree line, just so that members understand what that assessment is about. It's not a rule, it is a guideline, and in the supplementary planning document that sets out how domestic extensions should be assessed, the protection is afforded essentially to ground floor windows, not first floor windows. So the policy guideline for ground floor windows sets out that extensions can project up to 3 metres beyond a 45-degree guideline taken from the nearest point of the window to the boundary. In this instance, the neighbour is concerned about a window at first floor. However, as I've said, first floor windows are not afforded protection under this part of the policy regime, but we think it's a useful tool to be able to understand what the relationship would be. So we would assess it as if it were a ground floor window on that basis, and the extension could project 3 metres beyond a 45-degree line rather than having to be on line with it. I just want to make that clear to members so you understand how we assess household applications. The proposal is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Barbara, would you like to make your representations, please? Taz, can you set the timer? Thanks. You're okay.
It's still red.
A red light means
right.
go.
Right. Good evening, everyone. Whilst I appreciate the reduction of the balcony, I would still like to talk to my remaining issues. Planning policy states that if over 20 years old, existing windows have the right to maintain the level of illumination. However, I will have decreased daylight to my side window, which was added in 1999. In point 16, it states that this window looks into the applicant's garden. It does now, but has only done since the applicants demolished an outbuilding which prevented my view into their garden. In point 18, mention is made of a fence, such as was added in front of my window after the last planning meeting. It is over 2 metres, and whilst it does have an impact, it is by no means the same impact that a 5.3 metre wall will have, way above the fence and my window, and being only 2.2 metres away from my wall. Although the applicant report states that it is acceptable, I assert that it will be overbearing, overshadowing, and will cause me to have a decrease in visual amenity. In point 9, your policy states that it should respect the surrounding buildings. My property is the main one affected now, the Methodist Church not being a habitable place. My cottage is, however, all day, every day, and not just Sunday. I fail to see how this extension meets the criterion of respect at all. The rear location of the extension mentioned in point 12 will have a detrimental effect, not only on my property, but also on the whole character of the Oakbank Gardens, being out of proportion and overdeveloped. It is one oak bank and should respect the character of the area, despite not being visible from the street. In point 25, it admits some impact on my property. This is subjective, and I maintain, for the reasons stated throughout this process, that it will have more than some impact. If you, as a committee, are mindful to accept the planning officer's recommendation to pass this application and feel you have to disregard the reality of the effect it will have on my quality of life, I would like you to consider the compromise I propose. This has been circulated, I gather. The gist is this. 1. Move the extension over to come out from the existing side wall by the church. This would increase the distance from my wall by 300 millimetres, making it 2,500 millimetres, 8 feet instead of 7. No decrease in the width of the extension would be. 2. Level the length to match my end wall. This would be more sympathetic to the rest of the row and would help to alleviate the overbearing issue. This change would mean an internal loss of approximately 1.95 square metres. Both these changes would mean, incidentally, that the 45-degree rule is met. I do have the plans with me, I said that. Although there would still be issues, these amendments would be acceptable to me. I really hope you will give my points due consideration. Thank you very much.
Louise, would you like to speak now? Taz, can you start the timer, please?
Thank you, Chair and members. I'd like to reiterate some of the comments made by the applicants at the previous meeting and explain how they have addressed some of the concerns raised. As you've heard, the balcony has been removed from the proposals. The applicants have listened to the comments made by their neighbour and sought to address this positively. This follows further amendments made during the course of this application in line with officer requests. As set out in the committee report, the side kitchen window of the neighbouring property currently looks into the rear garden of Prospect Cottage. This is a secondary window, with the kitchen afforded light principally from the main rear window and additionally an opposite side window. This small side window is northwest facing, whereas the main kitchen window is southwest facing, which further limits the impact that any loss of light from this secondary window will have. Notwithstanding this, and as set out carefully in the committee report, the relationship between the extension and this window is considered acceptable. Any loss of light will be minimal and is not considered so harmful as to warrant a refusal, bearing in mind this is a secondary window. I would also reiterate the comment that an extension built under permitted development rights would have a similar effect. The extension is set in from the existing side elevations of Prospect Cottage. This, along with the chamfered sections, ensures that the extension remains subservient to the existing property in line with the Council's guidance. The extension is appropriate not only in scale but also in design and in appearance. As per the committee report, there would be no unacceptable adverse impact on the character and appearance of the existing dwelling or the surrounding area, and the proposed complies with the Council's development plan and householder guidance. As officers have clarified for members, the 45-degree guideline is applicable to the assessment of the impact on ground floor windows only, as set out in the Council's SPD on house extensions. It's understood that members have now visited the site, and it's hoped will have seen that the applicants are seeking to breathe new life into this characterful building and occupy it as their family home. Whilst the applicants are sorry that their neighbour is not supportive of the scheme, they do not believe that the impact on the side window is sufficient to warrant refusal or indeed render the scheme unacceptable when assessed against the Council's policies and guidelines, particularly given that the main source of daylight to this room will continue to be the larger southwest facing window. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, over to you members for your comments. Councillor Whittaker.
That's me on, Chair.
Yeah, when it's red you can, yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the comments made by the objector and by the applicant. Going back to the first report, it did say very clearly in that first report that this was a balanced judgment. And when we went on the site visit, I could see why they came to that conclusion. The talk about the 45 degrees in the report, I think, was talked of from the first floor window as opposed to the ground floor window, and reference has been made to that by both people speaking. The fact is that is a habitable room. The main window, which is quite obvious as we saw at the site visit, is at the rear. But the site visit, the side window is an important aspect. It's a working room and so on, a habitable room and so on. The worry about for me was when we look at that extension going out at the back.
He is doing, yeah.
Sorry, Danny.
Need to speak into it.
Forgive me. I know what it's like at that end of the room, old boy.
You need to speak into the microphone,
Yes,
Councillor
yes.
Whittaker.
Sorry, Chair, I was looking
It's
at you.
all right. Don't
I
look
was
at
looking
me.
at you for guidance. My concern is that when we went on the site visit, when this extension is going out at the back, it's going to be, I think somebody said 5 metres high. And it's a distance of about 3 foot from the side elevation of the next door neighbour. That's going to be quite intimidating for anything. Put aside the 45 degrees for a moment. That's going to be a significant gap. It's a traditional end terrace with, and I think later on, I think if you'll allow me, Chair, I'll read what the local councillor Cullens has said in terms of his comment. I just think this is a bit too far. The planning the plan that the next door neighbour has suggested, which I realise, and Adele clarified that before, it's not a new application or anything else, but by moving it, instead of just 300 mil, 600 mil, and adding that 300 mil to the other side next to the chapel, that would give the applicant exactly the same room. There would be no difficulty, same capacity, etc. And it would make the next door much easier to operate on. Now, I don't know, I'm not happy with this proposal as it's going for, and other people may comment, but at the end, at some stage, if it's possible, I know we've been here once before, whether, and the applicant has indicated, as the representative said, has been flexible in removing the balcony, which is very important, and I accept that and I appreciate that, but whether they would consider doing this on the other side, which is adjacent to the Methodist chapel. There's nobody there. There's no habitable rooms whatsoever. It won't make a blind bit of difference to them. So I'll stop there now for Chairman, if I may, Chair, and just reserve the right to come back if I may.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to make comment? Sorry. Yes, Councillor Hill. I wasn't looking that way. And I've got Councillor G, Councillor Beaver. Councillor G. Do you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we all went on the site visit, and I do have sympathy with the people round about there, but I can't see how, personally, we can refuse this application. If you look at some of the photographs there, you can see all down that road, the sight line is approximately the same, so that the new boundaries will come in approximately the same sight line as the rest of the houses. The applicant has got rid of the balcony, which is good. The applicant, at the side, has got. She's complaining about the lack of visibility from a window, but when we looked, she had got the side window, the rear window, and another window at the side, so she'd not be losing much light there. The only concern I had at the time was he'd built a boundary wall, and I thought that was too high, but that was a matter that can be rectified. So I can't see any objection on this, and I'm quite happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beaver? Are you switched on? Press.
All right. Right, okay.
You're
I
on.
was looking for that, but it wasn't there. Thank you. We heard during the debates that an outbuilding previously was in front of that window. Am I right in thinking that the outbuilding that isn't there anymore sat on what is that shale rubble and didn't go any further in any way? I refer you to talk about this area here. That's where it was. In which case it kind of finished before the window started. I'm just trying to figure out how much it was obscured.
We're just looking it up.
I haven't got any existing plans available, unfortunately, but from the ordnance survey plan, it does look as if it projected in that general area, but clearly that has gone now. So whilst there was some impact previously, I can't confirm or deny the extent of that projection, I'm afraid.
Okay, Councillor Beaver? Okay. Councillor Hilton?
Thank you, Chair. I do have some sympathy to the application in front of us this evening, and an alternative application isn't on the table at the moment. Whilst I do have sympathy with the objector, I don't believe that we can be looking at that alternative. The secondary window isn't afforded the protection that others would be, so I'm quite happy to second the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boardman?
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm on red now. Yes, I think just to echo some of the comments of the other councillors, I do have sympathy for the neighbouring property. The fact that the side window will look at the side of this extension. I think we have to be mindful, though, that the neighbouring property at any point could put up a 1.8 metre high fence, which would obscure the view into the window anyway. Also, without planning permission, this neighbour could put a 3 metre deep, 3 metre deep double-storey extension on that property under permitted development without it coming to this committee. And they could also do build a 6 metre deep, 4 metre high rear extension without this coming to this committee. So I think we need to be a little bit welcoming of the fact that the applicant has taken some advice from the committee and from the planning officers, has splayed the corners, has removed the balcony, and has gone some way to mitigate some of the impact on the neighbouring property. So if Danny hasn't already moved to accept the officer's recommendation, I will, or I'll second it.
Councillor Hilton's already done that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second Councillor Hilton. Third.
Okay. Any further comments from any? Councillor Whittaker?
Thanks, Chair. I did say I would reserve the right to speak. Reference was made just then to the fence that we saw on the site, which is in excess of the 2 metres, and I'm assuming that somebody will follow that up to make sure there's a planning application to meet that requirement. Secondly, there is a letter in the addendum from the local ward councillor, Councillor Cullens, which with your permission I'll read, Chair. Is that okay? Is that okay if I read it?
I think, have other people seen the letter? I think people have seen the letter, so it doesn't really...
Well, I'm looking round. Has everybody seen it?
Have you seen the letter from Councillor Cullens? Yeah.
Right, well, let me quote one paragraph then. This area of Gregson Lane has many properties which encapsulate the rural identity of that area of the village. Whilst improvements to Prospect Cottage are welcomed, this is from the viewpoint of the frontage, which is in keeping with the locality. However, the character of these properties extend beyond the frontage to the rear. I believe that the construction of a two-storey extension is not within keeping of the locality, as no other property in this immediate area has extended to 2 levels, whether they need permission or not. Therefore, in raising an objection, this is based on the requirements to maintain the character of this section of the village, and he asked that his points are considered. So I think those are perfectly appropriate comments to make, Chair. I'll finish there. I'm not happy with the recommendation. I would suggest that the alternative which has been tabled tonight is put to the applicant so that they may consider their continued cooperation with their neighbour. It wouldn't reduce the, they could build a two-storey extension as far out as the current one is. It wouldn't reduce the internal capacity of the building in any way, shape or form. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Do you want to come back on anything?
I've managed to locate the...
Just a minute. It's not, you're not ready yet.
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to Councillor Beaver's query a short while ago, I've located the existing plans as existed previously. It appears that whilst it was an outbuilding that was in that general area, it was actually attached to the building and actually projected closer to the neighbour than what is currently proposed. It was a low-level flat roof structure from the information I have available. Thank you.
Okay. I've got Councillor Morwood, who's indicated he wants to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. It's just unfortunate that perhaps the discussion about new plans should be between the neighbours. It's not our job to recommend that the applicant change their plans. As I say, it would have been better that the neighbour had gone to them and suggested that perhaps earlier. Maybe she did. So I think that's irrelevant at this stage. The fence that Councillor Boardman was talking about has already gone up. And yes, it's certainly higher on the applicant's side than it is on the neighbour's side because of the different levels. So I'm not sure the 2 metre rule, is that on the applicant's side or the neighbour's side, but I'm sure someone will sort that out. They're not losing any garden. Yes, they're going to lose some light from the side window, but it's a secondary window. It's losing light because of the fence. My feeling is, yes, like everybody else, we're sympathetic. And regarding Councillor Collins' remarks, the trouble is you can't keep the same character over hundreds of years. Eventually, new people move in with larger families and so forth, and the character will change over time. We are here to make sure that it's not ridiculous. And okay, it is a large extension, but it's within the rules, and I think at this stage I'll have to go with the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, if nobody else, do you want to come back, Adele?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify the matter of the boundary treatment and the legislation surrounding what constitutes permitted development, the height is taken from ground level of the site on which the fence is located. So where you have a difference in levels, a fence could be higher when viewed from the other side that the 2 metre is taken from the applicant's side. It's certainly something that we can check into, and if it's deemed that it is higher than 2 metres above ground level on the applicant's side, then we the normal protocols in accordance with the council's enforcement charter would be to invite an application to regularise any unauthorised development. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any more comments? If not, I'll move to the vote. I've had a proposer and a seconder for the officer recommendation. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show
clearly.
Okay. Any against? Any abstentions? Taz? Ooh. That's it.
Right, okay. Thank you, Chair. So the committee have decided that planning permission is granted subject to conditions for a two-storey re-extension at Prospect Cottage, Gregson Lane, Brindle. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. If anybody's come for that application and they want to leave now, if you go the same way that you came in, that's fine. Item 3B, Prospect House, Winds Lane, Wealdstone, pages 31 to 68, with an update on your addendum, but the recommendation remains the same. Ian's going to present this item. It's recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to conditions. I've got two registered speakers objector, Keith Williams and the ward councillor Margaret France. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission retrospectively for the remodelling and landscaping of land to the west of Prospect House and east of Winds Lane, Wealdstone, following the deposition of subsoils. The application site is in the Greenbelt and comprises a platform of land that has been created through the deposition of inert material, resulting in a steeply sloping bank rising upwards from Winds Lane, before rising more gently towards Prospect House. Prior to the works having taken place, there was a shallower gradient of grassland with a wilder tree-lined periphery to the west. The reprofiling and remodelling of the land to create a more stable platform amounts to engineering operations, which are not inappropriate developments in the Greenbelt, subject to impacts on openness and the purposes of including land within the Greenbelt. Although the land now has the appearance of an engineered operation rather than a more natural profile, the works themselves have resulted in a different landform, whereby the land remains visually open and free from development, albeit in a different form. The development would not conflict with any of the purposes of the Greenbelt and therefore does not represent inappropriate development within this Greenbelt location. The reprofiled slope is clearly visible from Winds Lane and appears as a rather stark, unnatural feature which has been exacerbated following recent tree works along Winds Lane, carried out separately from the engineering works. Although the reprofiled slope detracts from the visual appearance and character of Winds Lane, it is considered that this harm could be overcome with an appropriate landscaping scheme, which it is recommended is required by condition. A number of residents have raised issues about the impacts from surface water runoff on their properties. The lead local flood authority, as advisors to Chorley Council on on technical surface water matters, were consulted on the application and concluded that the development does not increase surface water runoff or alter flood risk at other locations. The lead local flood authority notes reports of pre-development flooding in this location and are satisfied that the proposal does not increase flood risk within the site or elsewhere. There are further concerns regarding the stability of the slope resulting from the material that has been deposited and profiled. The applicant has demonstrated a specification and method of works that is accompanied by an associated guarantee provided by the contractor. This is considered to provide an adequate level of assurance to enable the application to be determined. All issues are covered in detail within the report, and overall the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. Keith, would you like to speak now? Taz, can you start the timer, please? Yeah, that's it.
Good evening. Speaking on behalf of the residents of numbers 4 to 10 Winds Lane, I object to this planning application on the grounds of the continuing threat of flooding which it is causing in the present tense. This has actually occurred on 6 times in 18 months between June 2019 and November 2020. Contrary to the advice provided by the LLFA, only on the 1st of August 2019 could the rainfall, which they are claiming is responsible for the flooding, could that rainfall have been considered to be in any way exceptional? Though, as they know, the amount of rainfall is not the only factor determining flood risk. Prior to 2018, in the 50 years that all the occupants of those addresses have lived, there has been only one occasion when there has been any flooding, and that was at the time of Storm Desmond in December 2015. There has been no other flooding, contrary to what the LFA advice said. The effect of the post-2018 flooding has been the entry of water into number 10 Winds Lane via the front door, prevented only by the presence of the residents and engaging in a sandbagging operation and sweeping the water away from the door, otherwise it would have gone in. And those sandbags are still there, they have to be. The entry of water into the utility, storeroom and garage of number 6 Winds Lane, blocking of highway gullies, which have all had to be replaced by LCC highways. The overtopping of these gullies, leading to excessive water on the highway, and the inundation of the public footpath, which also runs down the side of the site. The post-2018 flood events are facts on the ground. They've actually happened, as distinct from the projected opinions of the LLFA staff, and they clearly contradict them. The LLFA also stated that there had been no, quote, removal of permeable surfaces. And whilst that is true, what they failed to recognise is that a seriously impermeable surface has been created by the deposition of, we calculate, up to 6,000 or more tonnes of spoil. Spoil, which the applicant claims is clay, I wouldn't dispute that, and that has been put between the surface topsoil, such as there is, and the original field horizon. The clay is inherently impervious. Compacted clay is seriously more so. Briefly, this prevents the percolation of rainwater down to the water table where it slowly and safely disperses under normal conditions. That's what happened prior to the development. Unable to penetrate the newly created impermeable layer, it accumulates on the ground surface, over which it quickly runs off as a potential flood.
Could you wind up now, please? You've had your 3 minutes.
The planning system exists in part in order to ensure that changes to the environment which bring benefit to one
Mr.
party.
Williams. Well, you've 3 minutes and you've exceeded that time. Councillor France.
And Jude, I don't.
It was, yeah.
Oh, it's automatic.
There you're on.
Thank you, Chairman and Councillors, for allowing me to speak on this planning application. Firstly, I'd like to bring to your attention a little about the history of this development. Most residents of Chorley would take advice from the planning officers or on the website prior to undertaking any significant alterations to their property. Submission of a planning application is customarily before and not after the works have been completed. And the applicant would be well aware of this fact, and also the fact that the onus was on the developer to produce an ecology survey and a tree survey prior to this development taking place. In this instance, the importation of tungsten clay and soil was first brought to my attention by the residents of Blackburn Road, Whitley Woods, who were seeing a constant flow of tractors and trailers loaded with soil, allegedly from the Botany Bay site nearby in the spring of 2019. It was apparent that works were taking place at Prospect House without any planning permission, and indeed the importation of soil continued at pace until a temporary stop order was served on Easter Saturday of 2019, at which time the work was almost totally completed. With a conservative estimate of the amount of materials brought in on site, calculating on the loads being half full approximately 6,000 tonnes minimum was calculated, and this could have been easily verified by an engineer looking at the change in the angulation of the ground, but this doesn't appear to have taken place, because if that was so, then this decision should be made by the Lancashire County Council Mineral and Waste Committee, who were very clear that they had no interest in it and bounced it back to Chorley Borough Council. So, when the planning application was finally submitted, the process was stalled because important information was not included, so the verification process for the application was delayed. Further delays ensued because of the involvement of Lancashire County Council Minerals and Waste Department and their subsequent decision to refer back to Chorley Borough Council. These significant delays allow for the entire completion of the works at Prospect House without any supervision or building control to take place. You are now being asked to grant legitimacy to a project that has shown a flagrant disregard to planning policy. As we have seen in this presentation, no assessment of the ecological impact or loss of habitat can now be made, so it is therefore impossible to mitigate the unknown. The applicant's own proposal states that this is garden, despite the fact that it is classed as agricultural land. Where is the application for change of use? If the Planning Committee is inclined to approve this application, then I would like to suggest that there is a condition made regarding surface water drainage. Residents have reported that in periods of heavy rainfall, they are now witnessing raw sewage being expelled from the grids further up Winds Lane, and this is being investigated by our environmental health officers. The implication is that the surface water drainage channels from the altered landscape have been joined into the existing combined sewers, leading to back pressure when the drains are overwhelmed with rainfall. This has been referred to United Utilities, who are unable to investigate until the next episode when there is evidence of sewage emerging from the grids uphill. So I'd like to see a condition for a requirement of a professionally designed and installed drainage system to alleviate water runoff from this site. And perhaps if members so determine, they may wish to defer the decision until the reports from Environmental Health and of United Utilities are available for their attention. Thank you.
Back on anything out of you? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Whittaker, Councillor Hilton.
Thanks, Chair. I was concerned about lots of work going on here without any planning applications being submitted. Maybe deliberately, I have no idea. But I have some experience of 6,000 tonnes of what's admitted is clay, which is impervious to any water assimilation. Councillor France has identified some of the issues that have applied, and the resident has objected, has articulated some of the concerns. I'm very reluctant to vote for this application until we see some reports from the bodies. I'm a bit concerned about Lancashire's County Council's inadequacies, if that's what they are. And I'd like to propose, Chair, that in order to get these reports, we could have a site visit. I don't know this area at all, and we can go and have a look at it, look at the contours of the land, look at where this neat sewage is coming out, and see just what the impact is going to be on residents. Thanks, Chair. That's my proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton, and I've got Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. This is a retrospective planning application. I'm not in favour of retrospective planning applications, but they are what they are. It was wrong to start this work without an ecology survey. It is wrong to start this work without at least having dialogue with the planning officers and going through due process. By submitting a retrospective planning application, this has shown contempt for the planning process, which is there to protect local residents. The arguments regarding flooding, the local flood authority have been quite clear on the fact that this is not going to cause an increased risk of flooding. They are the experts on this, and we have to take this at face value in the report. There's no doubt that flooding has increased in lots of places nationally over the last few years. It's increasing everywhere, and I would suggest that a lot of the flooding that has been increased is due to climate change. As it stands at the moment, we have to accept the local flood authority. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. Number one, I always thought where surface water was concerned, United Utilities were also an authority that needed to be consulted. I mean, I'd like to, in the addendum, there's some pictures of flooding, and I think it's number 10. The banking there, it almost looks like a reservoir. It's that high. You know, the other thing I'd also like to say is when this material was being removed at Easter time, we did get an enforcement order, and fortunately the Director of Street Scene had the sense to make sure that covered all Easter, because on Easter Saturday, when it was assumed the council would be not about, the applicant started to move the stuff again. Within an hour, fortunately, because the enforcement order had run through till the Tuesday, he was able to be stopped. So what I would like to do, I'd like to second Councillor Whittaker's site visit. I would want to make sure that site visit included going onto the garden of Prospect House and inspecting the ground there, because I would like to know whether officers have actually been onto that, because I think that should be included, because we need to have a look at that. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Adele.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a point of clarification, I can confirm that prior to the Easter weekend of 2019, I actually followed the muck carts from Botany Bay to the application site, and I was on the site and gave them a formal warning to stop. Obviously, events carried on and we served the temporary stop notices. We have been on site, and with the greatest of respect, members will not have the professional knowledge to be able to make any meaningful inspection of the site at this stage. I note members' concerns about the development commencing in advance of planning permission being granted. I can only refer you to the report and the fact that we have assessed ecology impacts, land stability, and there are recommended conditions to deal with those matters, as well as matters of additional landscaping to soften that edge. We have discussed flood risk. You're aware of what the lead local flood authority have said. They are the technical experts. They are not suggesting that any surface water drainage scheme is required or necessary. Members will be well aware of the legislation that sets out on what basis we can impose conditions, and there are very strict tests that need to be met. In terms of LCC's involvement, just to make members aware, we had dialogue with County Council officers very early in the process. It was not a matter for LCC to be involved with because the actual importation of material was not waste, therefore it's outside of their jurisdiction, so it was quite rightly a matter for Chorley Council to deal with, and it's for this committee to deal with. The evidence that we've got before us is the only reports that are going to be available. There is no other reports that we can seek from anywhere to ameliorate any of the concerns in terms of the structure of the banking and the materials and that kind of thing. If members are really concerned about the surface water, then we can draft a condition in consultation with Chair and Vice Chair to deal with that aspect. We would probably need to seek some professional advice on that from ground engineers, because I don't think the lead local flood authority would review it because they don't think it's necessary. But we can certainly go away and draft something that may satisfy members' concerns about future flood risk and have it independently looked at again, but we're not going to be able to do that prior to the application is determined. In addition, in terms of the United Utilities consultation, United Utilities, the arrangements with United Utilities that members will be very well aware of is that United Utilities review every single planning application and comment where they feel it necessary. We have had dialogue with them and they've not wanted to make any further comments. So there's nothing that we can go back and seek clarification from United Utilities. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Gabbard and then Councillor Heaton.
Thank you, Chair. I like the idea of what Adele has put forward there, and I think that is something that is necessary to go forward with the application. One of the other points, being a relative newcomer to the site, this applicant, I believe, is the same as the one for the Botany Bay application, and whilst we can't make a decision based on the character and the history of what they've done, what powers do we have as a council for applicant to completely disregard the planning process? Currently, they've seems to have done a lot as set out by the ward councillor and residents without application, then send one in, and it doesn't, to me, look like we have much powers to do anything. I was just wondering if we could have an idea of what there is.
Sorry. Adele?
The rules surrounding how we deal with unauthorised development are quite clear in statute and in legislation, in guidance set out by government, and also this council's approach to enforcement matters are set out in the council's adopted enforcement charter, and essentially what the whole system advocates is an opportunity should be given to a developer to regularise a breach of planning control. Stop notices are served very, very infrequently. You'll appreciate that one was served in this matter, but it was purely to do with the importation of materials to give us the opportunity to understand and establish what was occurring. And in response to that, the application has been submitted retrospectively. You'll see that it's been with us a significant period of time, almost 2 years. And as I say, we've had dialogue with various agencies. We've sought clarification from those technical experts, and then there are no other reports that we can seek at this stage. And again, just reiterate that United Utilities have had the opportunity to comment, and the lead local flood authority have given their comments. But the whole regime around planning enforcement is set out in the National Planning Practice Guidance. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Heaton?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Adele's just gone through it, really, what I was going to say, but this LFFA, I've raised no objection to this water flooding problems. Possibly, if it does occur frequently again, they'll be brought in to try and mitigate the problem, because if they have no objection now, they're saying it's not going to flood again. So, but that's about all we can do. If we can put a condition on to do some work, but like you say, we'll need a professional advisor to decide what work needs doing and at what cost to whoever. But I'll like to move the recommendation while I'm on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Boardman, Councillor Beaver, Councillor Morwood, Councillor Whittaker, Councillor France again.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just be brief, actually. I think this, unfortunately, is a sad reality of what happens when someone takes it on themselves to undertake a piece of work that they believe is lawful, and it isn't. So then comes back to us and uses the planning process as a retrospective application in order to legalise the situation, as Adele has quite rightly put over to us. Having read through the documentation, I think our planning officer has done an incredibly thorough and complete job of looking at each and every avenue which is available to them to see if there's a way that this type of development can be lawful or unlawful. And unfortunately, in line with Greenbelt policy, this type of engineering works does not seem to warrant much of an issue within Greenbelt policy. The fact that there's so much material coming to site is the worry more than anything. My concern initially was the statement from Councillor France in regards to agricultural land and not garden land. So I had a quick whiz through the previous planning applications, which some of them actually the applicant have put in, so there are some applications on the system. Unfortunately for us, the red line boundary is around the entire site that they're actually grading up at the moment. So another dead end for us, I think, there. Like I said, it's a sad reality of these type of situations, and I would put my faith in the planning officers that they've done a diligent job, and I would support them in their decision, and I'll move for an approval, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. I think this has just been an absolute total disregard. He's done something, thought it was lawful. No, he didn't, in my opinion. He knew what he was doing. He's not new at this. He's been doing it for years, and he's been flouting the law for years. I fully agree that our officers have done everything that they need to, and I feel that we're being forced to do this, and the system, regardless of law, is absolutely toothless. This guy's going to have more money to throw at anything. So what are we going to do? Fine him a bit? He'll have factor that into the cost, perhaps. I don't know. I do feel that we're going to allow this, and I do feel we're being forced on it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Marwood.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go quite as far as Councillor Beaver. That's up to him. Retrospective, as has been said by the Deputy Chair, Vice Chair, we don't like them, but they are allowed. And in most cases, they're reasonable, and we've had discussions. But just really to come back to Councillor Gabbett, there has been a roughshod way of going about this planning. It just basically shows the weakness of the current planning system, that it is totally in favour of the applicant, without a doubt. And this applicant is familiar with the rules and regulations. And it is a garden. I would suspect it's historically probably a garden from way back when it was all one big house and so forth. But it's all been split up so many times now over the history that I should think it's very difficult now to work out what was agricultural, what was garden, what was whatever. It almost feels as if we should be grateful that he's actually brought this retrospective application to us. And in that way, maybe we're being forced. But at least we have the advantage that it has come to the committee, and we are able to put in these conditions regarding landscaping. And I hope it will be landscaping, though some of the trees will be replaced and so forth. No doubt they won't be too high in case he has to do something in the future. In terms of the water, it's all very well putting the pictures out showing flooding, but unless you can come with some data, facts, rather than hearsay, okay, the engineering has gone up, the flooding seems to have increased, but flooding has, as has already been stated, has increased more over the last few years because of climate change. And then we can argue about whether climate change is real or not, but that's an argument for another day. We have to go with it on this occasion. We've got to put in the conditions we can. Perhaps the surface water drainage condition scheme can be put in. I suspect the local flood authority will say, well, we will have nothing to do with it, and it will cost us to do that. But I think we should do it. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Whittaker, Councillor France.
I think I'm on first, Chair, aren't I?
It's Councillor Whittaker and then Councillor France.
Okay. Chair, we're elected members. We're elected by members of the public. And the question comes to my mind, what confidence can members of the public have when we look at paragraphs 52 to 60 on page 24, and I'll just briefly, 52, the application description refers to the land as garden, however, it is agricultural land. 53, ecological impacts and contravene of the Wildlife Countries Act as the development took place without an opportunity to assess the ecological conditions. It is not known whether there has been any infringement. 54. Disappointment with the carrying out works prior to seeking planning permission and subsequent inability to properly assess the impacts and methods of the development before they took place. 55. The start date for the work is incorrect. This is noted. 56. The amount of material deposited is claimed to be less than 1,000 tonnes, but it is estimated by residents, and we've heard tonight, 6,000 tonnes. 57. A tree survey has not been undertaken and should be required, and we'll probably do it. 58. No forestry licence was applied for in the respect of the recent tree felling. The trees should have been protected with TPOs. It's unfortunate that the trees were not protected by TPOs. The applicant should have been dealt with by LCC as the authority for waste, but it wasn't done. So, what confidence can members of the public have in us as an authority if we are going to give permission to this lot for blatant disregard of all the rules? And it's okay saying it's in the law to make retrospective applications. It's immoral and it shouldn't be allowed. And I'm not going to vote for it, Chairman. Thank you.
Adele.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify the points that Councillor Whittaker raised, in that part of the report, under other matters, the purpose of that part of the report is to report comments that have been made by local residents and to address the comments if they haven't been detailed in the report above. The main issues in the report deal with material planning considerations that this planning committee can take into account, and the other matters raise other issues, and we've simply sought to address those other issues that residents have raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. Just very, very quickly, we've had some mention of United Utilities. Don't forget there is still an investigation going on. The next time there's heavy rainfall, they want to know whether raw sewerage is going out with this flood water, and that is still an investigation ongoing.
Okay. Yes. When I've got a proposal and a secondary for a site visit, so I'll take that first. And then I've got a proposal and a secondary for the officer's recommendation. All those in favour of site visit, please show. Those against, please show.
Through you, Chair, I think the motion for this site visit was carried.
Can you just show again clearly? All those in favour of a site visit?
6.
Yeah. Those against?
6.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So it's 6
So
and
it's site
6.
visit.
6 and 6, isn't it?
I got 7.
Did you? Yeah. All right, okay. Yeah, okay. Sorry, so it's site visit that's been, yeah.
Adele, do you want to come in?
Can I just be clear on the purpose of the site visit so that we can inform the applicant, please, of what purpose of members visiting the site, please?
Councillor Whittaker.
With whether the location, I want to be familiar with the amount of landscaping that's been done. I want to be familiar with the amount of trees that have been felled. I want to have a look at what the implication is.
Adele.
Just on the point of the tree felling, members need to be aware that the tree felling hasn't been undertaken as part of the development works for which planning permission is sought. The development was completed 18 months ago. The tree felling that has taken place is outside the development scheme. Thank you.
Councillor, I'm moving on now because we've moved to site visit. Yeah, we've already voted.
Through you, Chair, the vote's already been taken.
Yeah, the vote's already been taken. It's too late. One should think about these things before one does. Not afterwards. Okay. Item 3C. Bungalow filling station, Moor Road, Chorley, pages 69 to 96. With an update on your addendum, but the recommendation remains the same. Planning permission is granted subject to conditions. Adele's going to present this item. There are no registered speakers. Adele.
Thank you, Chair. This application proposes a replacement petrol filling station with associated facilities such as kiosk, shop, petrol pumps and tanks, etc. The principle of the development is considered to be acceptable in planning policy terms. The layout and access to the site would be reconfigured, and after various amendments and additional information, Lancashire County Council Highways have confirmed that they're satisfied with the scheme and raised no objection. The site has contamination due to past activities, and the application proposes an acceptable remediation strategy which is to the satisfaction of the Environment Agency and the Council's Land Contamination Officer. In terms of general design, it's considered that the proposal would provide a visual enhancement in the street scene to the front. With regard to the impact on amenity, the application has satisfactorily addressed that neighbouring residential properties would not be adversely affected by noise, with certain aspects being controlled by recommended conditions. Members will be mindful that the officer report presents a finely balanced judgment in respect of the impacts of the proposed building, which would have on the property located next door at number 119 Moor Road. On balance, it's recommended that the application is approved subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right, over to you, members. Councillor G.
We went to where the objection was objecting to the closeness of the building. When we went there, we inspected the area, and in my opinion, that if people look at page 90 and 91, if they scroll down there, they can see the forecourt and the house next to where the objection is. They're changing it round, I think it's 90 degrees, I'm not quite sure. So the shop is running parallel with the house on the right. There is a difference in the side level between the house and the forecourt. I can't see any problem where the shop is going. The height of the shop will be, or the building will be the same height, or approximately the same height as the roof of the garage or the awning, whatever it is. It's an area a garage that needs redeveloping. It's gone past its sell-by date by the looks of it. It's a very busy petrol station, and in my opinion, I think it's an important amenity for the area around there. The only concern I had when I went there was that there was a shop across the road, but looking at it, I didn't see any problems with the shop and the garage. They seem to work well together. So, yes, I was more than happy with it, and I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boardman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I did go to the site visit yesterday. Unfortunately, I was a bit too early for you. So I got it mixed up, unfortunately. But I did have a look at the site while I was there. I think the objections come from the residents at 119 next door. But looking at the proposed scheme, it does seem to improve over what's there at the moment. At the moment, the canopy of the filling station actually extends right up to the footpath, and therefore projects quite a way forward of the front elevation of that dwelling. Yes, there is a bit more space on the side of it, and I do accept that. But this site has been developed over a number of years and has been added to in a bit of an ad hoc manner. And I think the proposal that's come forward will certainly smarten up the site and make it a better use. I do have one concern though, and it's the actual access and egress into the site. And I think they've put in their report and draw in some sweep path analysis in and out of the site, which is all well and good and does look very, very good. However, yesterday at 3 o'clock, it was absolutely mobbed with school children at that part of town, on both sides of the footpath, basically passing the garage, some coming into the garage to get sweets and snacks after school. I can only see that improving and more people going to it if there's a better offer on there. So I just want to be 100% sure that the footways and the footpaths have been really well looked at for, and also with regards to the pedestrian crossing that's nearby for the children coming out of school at those times of day.
Okay.
And I'll refer to Adele for that confirmation, please.
You want to come in, Adele?
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of discussion with LCC Highways, and they have looked at it very, very closely, and there has been some amendments to the originally submitted scheme to reflect their concerns. So they're satisfied from a highway safety perspective. It's okay.
Okay. I've got Councillor Beaver, Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I went on the site visit yesterday. The three comments from the objection is to do with light. And if we look at the photograph of the forecourt on page 90, you can see the property on the right. The windows that face the forecourt are all blurred out. You can't, it's not a straight piece of glass. The bedroom to the rear of the property is also etched out. I noticed that the blinds to the main bedroom was down because the sun starts in the morning at the back of that house. Over the day, it travels straight over the house to the front. So there's no way this new site can impact because the sun travels over his house. He closes the bedroom curtains in the morning so he can sleep, and they close the front windows so they can watch the telly. I don't think the light has an impact on this, and I'm quite happy with the proposal and support it and propose we go with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I start, can I just talk about this, digress for 30 seconds and talk about the technology? We are getting a different order in our screens from the order you're calling speakers, so perhaps we can look at that at the end of the meeting and for future meetings. I'll move on to the application. I have no problem with this application either, in terms of this is a site that needs redeveloped. Yes, it's tired, it's definitely needs modernising, but everybody seems to have totally forgotten about the effect on the resident. I'm not at all happy with the fact that the building has suddenly been shunted right across next to his garden. Unlike the first application, it's not just going a few metres past his back garden, it goes all the way to the back of the garden. And I think it's totally irrelevant whether he's got a blind down on his window or whether it's a frosted window or not, because the next person that comes along, well, can change it. I suppose you could say then they'll know what they're buying. But I feel it's unfortunate. Perhaps they could have put it all the way to the back where it wouldn't have had any effect at all. And the forecourt could have been at the front where it's always been, but it would still have been a modern forecourt, and it would be more in keeping with what happens now, and it wouldn't have anywhere near the effect that it does on the resident of 119. So on this occasion, I'm going to vote against. Thank you.
Any more comments from anybody? If not, I'll move to the vote because I think it's been proposed and seconded. Sorry, Councillor. Go on.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair. I was going to speak and then I wasn't.
I know, I asked you and you said no.
I do think that the proposed building, in terms of its scale, height and massing and close proximity to the resident at 119, actually might have some unacceptable and adverse impacts on the immunity of the occupiers of the neighbouring residential property, particularly in terms of outlook and overbearing impacts. Members obviously feel differently about the redevelopment of the site, so I'm on the fence on this one as well, I'm afraid, but I do have some concerns about that. Thank you.
Okay. So, as I say, I had a proposal and a second for the officer recommendation. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Against? Taz?
Thank you, Chair. It would seem that the motion has been carried in respect of the planning permission being granted, subject to conditions. for the demolition of the existing petrol filling station and the erection of a replacement filling station at 117 Moor Road, Chorley. Thank you.
97 to 100. Adele? Councillor Boardman, sorry. I missed you. I didn't look at my screen.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, I've missed this one. I have an interest in one of the appeals that's on there.
I did notice.
I must apologise for not bringing that up earlier, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Adele?
Oh. Sorry, in terms of Councillor Boardman's comments, I think he can still remain in the room because there's no actual voting itself.
Because we're only noting the report.
I'll happily leave, Chair.
You're waiting now. You're staying.
Thank you, Chair. Members will note there are quite a few appeals detailed on this report for noting. The ones I really want to bring your attention to are the ones for against non-determination of 2 applications on safeguarded land. Members will remember that these were considered last month at a special meeting. At the moment, it looks like the inquiry will open on the 17th of August, but I'm still waiting for formal confirmation of that. And in respect of the appeal decisions, the one to bring you to your attention really is the one that Councillor Boardman has an interest in and to know, and the appeal was allowed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Note that report. I've no urgent business. So that's the end of the meeting, the business to be considered tonight. Thank you, everybody. Safe journey home, and can you stay in your places until somebody tells you to move safely?